The war has already begun, but you won't see soldiers, you won't hear gunfire. This war is fought in the shadows of supply chains, in the depths of mines, and inside the gleaming walls of refineries. And right now, America is losing. China controls 70% of the world's rare earth production. They dominate 92% of global refining. They hold the keys to your smartphone, your electric car, your national security. Until 3 weeks ago, until a $7.4 billion bombshell dropped that nobody saw coming. If you want to understand the biggest geopolitical power shift happening right now, smash that like button. Subscribe and hit the bell, because what I am about to reveal will change how you see everything from your iPhone to America's military future. Drop a comment and tell me, did you know China controlled this much of our supply chain? This is the story of how America just launched its first major counterattack in the minerals war. And Tennessee, of all places, just became the most strategic location in the entire Western Hemisphere. Let's talk about the crisis nobody wants you to know about. And while politicians argue about tariffs and trade deals, there's a silent stranglehold happening beneath the surface. China doesn't just lead in critical minerals, they have an absolute monopoly. We're talking about 70% of global rare earth mining, over 90% of processing. And here, yes, the terrifying part, 92% of the refined materials that go into every piece of modern technology. Think about what that means for just a second. Your electric vehicle, made with their minerals. Your smartphone, powered by their processed materials. America's most advanced fighter jets. The semiconductors inside are dependent on Chinese-controlled supply chains. The F-35 Lightning II, America's most sophisticated fighter aircraft, requires rare earth permanent magnets that China dominates 93% of global production for. This isn't just an economic issue. This is a national security nightmare. And for decades, Washington did absolutely nothing about it. They watched as factory after factory closed. They stood by as China systematically cornered the market on 13 critical minerals, essential for defense, aerospace, semiconductors, and clean energy technology. But here's what changed everything. On December 15th, 2025, in a move that sent shockwaves through Beijing, the Trump administration announced something unprecedented. The United States government, through the Department of Defense, would take a 40% stake in a $7.4 billion critical minerals refinery in Tennessee. Not a loan, not a subsidy, an actual equity stake. The U.S. military becoming a major shareholder in a foreign mining company. This has never happened before, and it signals just how desperate, how critical, how existential this minerals war has become. Let me break down exactly what's being built and why it's a complete game changer. The project is being spearheaded by Korea Zinc, the world's largest zinc smelting company. But make no mistake, this is an American operation funded primarily by American taxpayers and controlled by the American military. Here are the staggering numbers. The total investment, $7.4 billion. Korea Zinc is selling shares worth $1.9 billion to a joint venture where the U.S. Department of Defense holds 40% control. On top of that, the U.S. government is providing $4.7 billion in loans. JP Morgan is financing the deal. The Commerce Department is kicking in $210 million in subsidies under the CHIPS and Science Act. Let me say that again. The Pentagon now owns 40% of this operation. This isn't just private enterprise. This is state-backed industrial strategy. This is Washington finally waking up to the reality that you cannot be a superpower if another nation controls the minerals you need to build weapons, electronics, and energy infrastructure. The facility will be located in Clarksville, Tennessee, about 50 miles northwest of Nashville. They're not starting from scratch. They paused through rebuying the only remaining zinc smelter in the entire United States from Trafigura S. Nearstar, tearing it down, and replacing it with a massive state-of-the-art complex scheduled to open in 2029. When fully operational, this refinery will produce 540,000 metric tons of critical minerals annually. Let me break that down. 300,000 tons of zinc, 35,000 tons of copper, 200,000 tons of lead. And here's the kicker, 5,100 tons of rare earth elements. Why does this matter? Because zinc is absolutely critical for galvanizing steel used in infrastructure and military vehicles. Copper is the backbone of electrical wiring, renewable energy systems, and electric vehicle charging infrastructure. Silver, which will also be processed at this facility, is essential for solar panels and electronics. And rare earth elements? They're the secret sauce in everything from guided missiles to wind turbines to smartphone screens. To understand why America is making this massive bet, you need to understand just how dangerous the current situation is. China's dominance isn't just about having more mines. It's about controlling every single step of the supply chain, mining, processing, refining, manufacturing. They've built a vertically integrated empire that took 30 years to construct, and they've used it as a weapon. In October 2025, China announced sweeping export controls on rare earth elements. They specifically targeted 12 rare earth minerals critical to semiconductors, defense technology, and telecommunications equipment. The message was clear. cross us, and we cut off your supply. These weren't idle threats. In December 2024, China banned exports of antimony and germanium to the United States. Antimony is used in bullets, armor-piercing ammunition, and infrared missiles. Germanium is essential for fiber optics and satellite systems. The ban sent prices soaring and exposed just how vulnerable American supply chains really are. The statistics are terrifying. The United States imports 78% of these essential materials from China. For heavy rare earths, the most valuable and hardest to process, America depends on China for 99% of supply. Think about that. 99%. One nation controls almost the entire supply of materials that go into your smartphone, your laptop, your car, and your country's defense systems. This is economic warfare. And for decades, America was unarmed. But there's another layer to this. China didn't achieve this dominance through natural resources alone. They achieved it through strategic subsidies, environmental deregulation, and predatory pricing. They flooded the market with cheap rare earths, driving American and Australian producers out of business. Once the competition was eliminated, they jacked up prices and imposed export restrictions. It's the oldest playbook in economic warfare. And it worked flawlessly. So what changed? Why is America suddenly pouring billions into a Tennessee refinery? Because the Trump administration realized something that previous governments refused to acknowledge. You cannot run a 21st century military on 20th century supply chains. You cannot lead in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, or clean energy when your adversary controls the raw materials, and the clock is ticking faster than anyone wants to admit. Let's talk about why Tennessee. This isn't random. Clarksville is located near Fort Campbell, one of the largest military bases in the United States, and home to the 101st Airborne Division. The refinery is specifically designed to recruit retiring soldiers. Starting salaries, $86,000 annually for 420 new jobs. The workforce will be young, disciplined, and trainable, according to local economic development officials. This isn't just about creating jobs. It's about building a strategic asset that integrates military personnel directly into the supply chain. It's about ensuring that the people producing America's most critical materials have security clearances, loyalty, and a deep understanding of national security. The facility will also restart a Tennessee zinc mine to feed the refinery. This creates a domestic supply loop. Mining, refining, and manufacturing all happening on American soil. No longer dependent on Chinese processing, no longer vulnerable to export bans. The implications are massive. When this refinery comes online in 2029, it will be the first zinc refinery built in the United States since the 1970s. That's over 50 years. Half a century of offshoring and deindustrialization reversed by a single project. But it's not just zinc. This facility will produce 13 different critical and strategic minerals. Copper for electrical infrastructure, lead for batteries, rare earth elements for magnets and semiconductors, silver for solar panels and electronics, each one essential, each one currently dominated by China. And here's where it gets even more interesting. The Commerce Department announced this project under the CHIPS and Science Act, the same legislation designed to bring semiconductor manufacturing back to America. This isn't a coincidence. Semiconductors require critical minerals. If you want to build chips in America, you need to refine the minerals in America. This refinery is the foundation for an entirely new industrial strategy. America isn't alone in this fight. The G7 just announced they're holding an emergency meeting in Washington on January 12, 2026, specifically focused on securing rare earths and critical mineral supplies. This is unprecedented. Finance ministers from the world's most powerful democracies gathering to discuss rocks and metals. That tells you everything you need to know about how serious this has become. Meanwhile, China is doubling down. They just announced a $900 billion investment in technology sectors directly tied to critical minerals. They're expanding processing capacity. They're locking in supply agreements with African and South American nations. They're building refineries in allied countries to bypass Western sanctions. This is an arms race, but instead of nuclear weapons, it's about who controls the minerals that power everything from iPhones to hypersonic missiles, and the stakes couldn't be higher. By 2030, global demand for critical minerals is expected to triple. Electric vehicles alone will require 14 times more battery minerals than today. Data centers powering artificial intelligence will consume unprecedented amounts of copper and silver. Renewable energy infrastructure will need rare earth magnets and semiconductors at scales we've never seen before. Whoever controls these supply chains will control the global economy. It's that simple. It's that terrifying. And right now, China is winning, but America is starting to fight back. The Department of Energy just announced $134 million in funding for rare earth recovery projects. Louisiana secured an $850 million investment from Element USA for a rare earth refining facility. The Trump administration negotiated over $10 billion in critical mineral deals across 5 countries in October 2025 alone. This isn't just one refinery in Tennessee. It is the beginning of a comprehensive strategy to rebuild America's industrial base from the ground up. But not everyone is celebrating. Korea Zinc's major shareholders, including the Youngpoong conglomerate and private equity firm MBK Partners, are furious. They claim this deal is a power grab by Korea Zinc's chairman to cement control by bringing in the U.S. government as a white knight investor. They filed legal complaints to block the share issue. Here's the reality. This is a hostile takeover, not by a corporation, by a government. The U.S. military is essentially nationalizing a piece of Korea Zinc's operations to secure strategic minerals. It's state capitalism. It's industrial policy. It's the kind of economic intervention that Washington spent decades criticizing China for doing. But times have changed, and desperate times require desperate measures. There are also concerns about environmental impact. Mining and refining are notoriously dirty industries. Clarksville residents are worried about pollution, water contamination, and health risks. Local officials have approved property tax abatements to attract the project, but critics argue that taxpayers are subsidizing a foreign corporation while shouldering environmental costs. These are legitimate concerns. But the national security argument is winning. When you're facing a potential cutoff of materials essential for defense, environmental concerns take a back seat. So why should you care about a refinery in Tennessee? Because this project will directly impact your life in ways you probably haven't considered. First, technology prices. If America successfully builds a domestic critical mineral supply chain, it could stabilize prices for electronics, electric vehicles, and renewable energy systems. Right now, price volatility is driven by Chinese export controls and supply disruptions. A domestic supply chain reduces that risk. Second, national security. If a conflict erupts with China over Taiwan or the South China Sea, the U.S. military needs to know it can produce weapons and technology without Chinese materials. This refinery is insurance. It's a backup plan. It's strategic independence. Third, jobs. 420 high-paying manufacturing jobs in Clarksville is just the beginning. The entire supply chain will require miners, engineers, logistics workers, and technicians. This is blue-collar job creation at scale. Fourth, the environment. Here's the paradox. To build a clean energy future, you need to mine dirty minerals. Solar panels require silver. Wind turbines need rare earth magnets. Electric vehicle batteries consume lithium, cobalt, nickel, and copper. If America wants to hit climate targets, it needs to mine and refine these materials domestically. Otherwise, you're just offshoring the pollution to China and pretending your hands are clean. Finally, geopolitics. This refinery is a statement. It tells China that America is no longer willing to be held hostage. It signals to allies that Washington is serious about building resilient supply chains, and it demonstrates that the era of unchallenged Chinese dominance over critical minerals is coming to an end. Let's zoom out. The Tennessee refinery is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. The Trump administration has renamed the Department of Defense to the Department of War, a symbolic but powerful signal that the United States is preparing for long-term strategic competition. The Pentagon is also developing a fleet of small-scale refineries specifically designed to produce critical minerals for bullets, armor, and military technology. These aren't commercial operations. They're military installations designed to ensure that America can fight a war, even if China cuts off all exports. Meanwhile, China has temporarily suspended its second wave of rare earth export controls until November 2026. Why? Because they realized the restrictions were accelerating America's push for independence. By easing the controls, China is trying to slow down Western investment in alternative supply chains. It's a calculated move, a strategic retreat designed to maintain long-term dominance. But the genie is out of the bottle. America, Europe, Japan, South Korea, and Australia are all racing to build domestic refining capacity. The era of Chinese monopoly is ending. The question is, how long will the transition take, and how painful will it be? By 2029, when the Tennessee refinery comes online, the global minerals landscape will look completely different. America will have multiple domestic refineries. Europe will have secured supply agreements with African nations. Australia will have expanded its rare earth processing capacity. And China will be facing real competition for the first time in decades. But here's what keeps strategists awake at night. What if China responds with a total export ban before Western alternatives are ready? What if Beijing calculates that it's better to weaponize their monopoly now, while they still have maximum leverage, rather than wait until America and its allies achieve independence? That's the nightmare scenario. A sudden complete cutoff of critical minerals exports from China to the West. Factories shut down, supply chains collapse, technology production grinds to a halt. In that scenario, the Tennessee refinery wouldn't be a game changer. It would be a lifeboat, one small source of domestic supply in an ocean of disruption. This is why the stakes are so high. This isn't just about economics, it's about survival. The ability to produce technology, generate energy, and defend the nation depends entirely on access to these materials. The good news? America is finally taking the threat seriously. The $7.4 billion Tennessee Refinery is the single largest investment in critical minerals infrastructure in modern American history. It's a signal that Washington understands the danger and is willing to spend whatever it takes to address it. But the bad news? It might already be too late. China has a 30-year head start. They've locked in supply agreements across Africa, South America, and Southeast Asia. They've built processing facilities that are more efficient, more advanced, and more cost-effective than anything the West has. Catching up won't be easy, it won't be cheap, and it won't be fast. So here's where we are. America just made a $7.4 billion bet that it can break free from Chinese dominance over critical minerals. Tennessee just became ground zero for the most important industrial project of the 21st century. And the outcome of this minerals war will determine who leads the global economy for the next 50 years. This isn't a story about rocks and metals. It's a story about power, about control, about who gets to shape the future of technology, energy, and defense. China has spent 3 decades building an empire on critical minerals. America is trying to dismantle that empire in less than 5 years. The odds are steep. The challenges are immense, but the alternative, total dependence on a strategic rival, is unacceptable. The Tennessee Refinery won't solve the problem overnight, but it's a start. It's a declaration that America refuses to be held hostage. It's a foundation for rebuilding industrial capacity that was systematically dismantled over decades. And here's the thing. This is just the beginning. More refineries are coming. More mines are opening. More investments are being announced. The minerals war is heating up. And the next few years will determine whether America reclaims its position as an industrial powerhouse or remains permanently dependent on Chinese supply chains. If this video opened your eyes to the biggest geopolitical struggle happening right now, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that actually matter. Comment below. Do you think America can break free from Chinese mineral dominance, or is it too late? What should the government do next? The minerals war is happening whether you're paying attention or not. The question is, will you understand what's at stake before it's too late? I'll see you in the next one. Stay informed, stay ahead, and never underestimate the power of the elements that built our modern world.